For my Sinatra portfolio project, which is the second sort of module project within the Flatiron School curriculum, I decided to build this app that, as you'll see, I've called Local. Um, and I guess the front page of the web app sort of tells you what the sort of concept is, but it's a pretty simple web app that just tries to track some local events, specifically events in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, where I live, um, and allow users to sort of keep track of an aggregated collection of upcoming events in town, to register their interest in them, and then to sort of save them according to their RSVPs for those events. It's pretty simple. Um, it was built out of a real interest, though, largely because Winston-Salem, although it's a city of 200,000 people, has no sort of central place to follow events outside of Facebook or something like Eventbrite that is really just sort of a ticket sale, like a ticket merchant vendor online. So I was hoping that this might be a real, sort of hub for the community and keeping track of a diverse array of things going on around town, and keeping that sort of like neatly organized, centrally organized, and a little less cluttered than some of the other current available options. But we'll just jump right in. Um, the project was, in a lot of ways, built around not only database persistence of information while also front-ending that information for a web app like this. Um, but also it had a lot to do with um, validating user information, making sure that users um, not only could log in and sign up, but validating information, making sure their password could authenticate using this gem called bcrypt. So I guess we'll start by walking through the sign up and logins um, sort of portals of the site. I can later talk a little bit about the routing there, a little bit about the validation authentication, but I'll just sort of give a quick tour of the site first. To begin, I do have users either sign up or log in large part because of the requirements of the project. I think in the future I'd let people at least see the index without logging in. Um, you'll see I have a very basic, to begin, I have a very basic sort of validation in that my HTML input elements within this form require you to fill in some information, or else you'll see they will pop a little warning message up if the field hasn't been filled up. So they already have that basic level. I do have the web app is configured so that if someone was able to send a post request where this form is headed, um, if someone was tried to send a post request and somehow was able to bypass that HTML sort of security measure, it still would, the user class object, when they're building a new user object, it still requires a certain amount of, I think it requires presence in the instance variables of first name and last name, etc. So it would log an error message for that user and would then report the error message back. The one thing, so you'll see, for instance, let's say I try to log in with test, but I'll save. I've already made an account with this username or with this email. It's my own email, as it happens. Feel free to send emails to that email if you'd like. But let's say try to use a username an email that's already been used. You'll see this sort of, not only does it fail to pass the sort of validations, but it also, I've built using, I think it's the Rack Flash gem, or maybe it's Sinatra Flash gem, but I was able to sort of register in the views for the sign up page, for the login page as well, when someone failed to validate correctly, or someone failed to pass the validations necessary to sign up or log in. But we'll go ahead and log in. I guess I should show it does the same for, I guess it does the same for password if someone were to provide an empty or nil password, but the input um, element, the HTML input element, also requires that as well. So it'll be hard for me to show you that happens without somehow tricking the browser into posting something without using the form. But we can go to the login page really quickly. I'll just log in under this username that I've already made. It has the same, if I type in the wrong password, we get a little error message. I would probably want the error message to actually be a generic one, not showing that it was the password that was the issue or the username that was the issue, but just for the purpose of showing that I did the work for this project. Or if we type in a username that doesn't exist, that was a bad example. Similarly, I built an error message for that. We'll go ahead and log in correctly. All right. So upon logging in, actually maybe I should maybe start with we'll make a test account. We'll call it John Smith, john@fake.com, password. Upon logging in, you'll see that there's it goes to the sort of user view page, which in this case is blank because our new user hasn't registered interest in the events. But then if you go to the index page for the events, which is sort of the main page of the app, you'll see that we have a sort of aggregated list of a variety of different events at different venues organized by different sort of organizations around town. All that's supplied by a variety of different scraping methods I built for each different sort of events calendar. Although I love the idea of this app being something that could extend beyond Winston-Salem, North Carolina, I really want to start it off here, and I don't think it really would be able to extend because, you know, there's no API or sort of like publicly available JSON formatted information I'm using for this. I had to go and build an individual scraping method for every single individual events calendar around town, and I only have, I think, 4 at the moment that I'm using. There's several others I'd like to use, some of which are just almost impossible to scrape. Some of their information is only available via through sort of some JavaScript functions that I'm not able to build a Nokogiri scraping method around. But I thought we had a pretty workable list to start off with now. So you'll see that I have all the events indexed by their upcoming days, although I have automated a process whereby it continues to scrape new events and clear old events. I also have sort of a safety mechanism in, even if there's events persisting in the database from prior to today, the index page only shows events for today and after, just in case. But really the only options here are to sort of browse and then click on an event to go from an event index page to an event show page. Clicking on the event takes you to the event show page, routes you to the event show page, and the view here sort of shows all the information we already saw, but it also gives an option to create an RSVP that links a user to that event. Joins, I guess, would be the more accurate word, joins the user to that event. We also have more information and a link to the actual website for the event as well. I guess the real bulk of what the sort of user experience or the sort of function offered by this, besides just a sort of aggregated view, comes in the form of this RSVP form here. So I can say I'm going, we get a little flash notice that you've RSVP'd, and then you sort of have the opportunity, well, I guess first I should go back, if you go back to the main calendar, you'll see that the sort of badge down here changes from, just some others have RSVP'd to you and 3 others have RSVP'd. We also have the option, the other thing that changes is if you go to your events, you're now tracking this event in a sort of on your user show page, and those events will sort of similarly be indexed going up and down based on their date. But if we go back to the event, we have the option to, instead of making a new SVP, we can amend that RSVP. So I can say I can't make it. And then when we go back to the main page, we'll see that this changes from you and several other people are going to you've decided not to attend. And if we just don't want to track the event at all, we can delete the RSVP entirely. I think there's something to be said for the fact that announcing you cannot go and deleting your RSVP have some overlap there. for the portfolio project, I really needed to demonstrate that I knew how to have a form sort of override its post method and either patch or delete um, a send a sort of patch or delete action to a sort of specific model and its associated route. Um, so I went ahead and made both the make an RSVP option with I can't attend, but also delete the RSVP. If we were thinking about extending and scaling this app in the future, we would probably want to play around with that a little bit. But even so, that's really the bulk of the sort of app here. I don't have any sort of functionality between users at the moment. I think that there'd be something worth considering and building in the future. It'd be nice perhaps to have users be able to submit requests for posting their own events. That could be like admin moderated or something like that. Oh, and I have a basic logout feature as well that just takes you right back to the main site. And maybe the only other thing I just want to show is that I spent some time really making sure that this was a responsive design that could work just as well on a desktop as it would on a, the smallest 320 pixel wide iPhone screen. I think it holds up pretty well there. You'll see that all these pages, all these scale pretty nicely. When we get down to 320, what took maybe the most time, let me just log in again. What took maybe the most time to build responsive design around was the actual sort of RSVP box here and the forms nested inside of it, but I think it all came up pretty nicely. Yeah, and I mean, maybe the only other thing worth pointing out is that this is sort of a web app that takes dynamic URL requests, and rather than have 200 different pages actually built, we're using a pretty sort of simple MVC format where I only have a sort of handful of views. I have for indexes, for events, I have an index and a show view. For RSVPs, I don't have any view at all because that's sort of really represented within the sort of event show view, the sort of RSVP that a user already has for that joins them to that event. For users, I just have a show view, and then I have a login, sign up, and welcome view as well. All of which are all rendered within my layout view over here. And then my routing up here in my controllers. Besides the sort of basic welcome, I have a sessions controller that handles logins and logouts and signups. And then I have events and RSVP controllers. The events controllers really just render either the sort of index or show page. The RSVP's controller takes care of that sort of nested form inside of those event show pages, either posting, patching, or deleting that. And for users too, I have just the sort of user show page as well. And I think that should cover the app. It was fun to build, got me excited about designing apps that I would be similarly useful not only to me but maybe to certain communities. And feel free to leave a comment or email me if you have any other questions. Thanks so much.